Welcome back to another episode of RecTalk. You'll notice Sean's not here today, and I'm taking lead on the intro, and this is the third time we're filming this, so apologies. You're probably getting bored of smiling. Today's episode features Louise Archer of Retrained Search. Thank you so much for making the journey today.
It's a pleasure. It's really nice to be here. It was a nice journey.
Good. It seems like you brought the weather with you as well, because it's been dreadful the last few days.
I know, so. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's nice. It's a Friday. I'm feeling very chill. It's a really nice place to come to and be.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I brought you all some treats with me too.
You did. We'll make sure we share those out. I'm having all of them. Right, so you're here today to talk to our listeners and our viewers about how to transition from contingent recruitment, which is the majority of the recruitment market, into that world of retained. I think a good place to start would be, tell us what is retained recruitment and why is that? Why is that your focus?
Well, I was a contingent recruiter for many years. I guess really for the majority of my career, I was a contingent recruiter. So I mean, I that's what I am, kind of. I've been brought up as. My mum had a recruitment agency, so that's how I ended up in recruitment in the first place.
Bloody hell.
I know, yeah. I was filing CVs at 13 years old when everyone smoked in the offices, and it was all on paper, and then you had to send them by fax and stuff like that. Yeah. And I guess it must be in my blood. My brother does it too, so it was what we're always going to do. But retained was never something that I had even heard of. I went from secretarial temps to HR recruitment into engineering, and then saw that there was a whole overseas recruitment thing going on, and later in my career, and then moved into the US and headed up a flagship account for ExxonMobil, all contingent, in fact some of it contract as well. So I didn't expect to be working retained at all. I didn't, like I said, I didn't even know what it was. And it wasn't until you hear about executive search and you hear about that kind of world, and I just thought it was like a double cuff pinstripe suit type thing somewhere that I wasn't, somewhere that I wasn't anyway. And I never, I just thought it was some sort of dark art or mystery that I was never going to be able to do.
Kind of.
Like a network type thing. And it wasn't until I met a guy when I was working for Air Swift, when I came back from the US and got pointed sort of at Europe as a market, who he and I were given the task to shore up the perm revenue of the business. And he had done some retained work. And there was one other person in the business that had won a couple of retainers, and he showed me how to do it, basically. And the first thing that I was surprised about, and I'll come to answer your question about what it is in a moment, is that what we did was secure retained work on the business we were already working on. So it wasn't anything more senior. It wasn't new work. It was with existing clients. It soon turned into being new clients as well, but there was no change in level. And that was the first thing for me that I was really surprised about, because I thought it was this executive thing. And the more I learned from Matt, and the more I started to win my own work, I started to realise that it was a solution to the challenges that hiring companies face, rather than an exclusively executive model. So if you were to look at what executive search is, in my experience, it's different to retained search or retained recruitment.
Okay.
So the model of working on a retained basis is that some financial commitment from the client enables us to put in place a process that means that we can produce a result. And not just any result, but the best result that's available to us all in the market at this time. And that might be on a single search. It might be a single hire. At any level. It could be a multi-hire piece where one hires straightforward, but 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 are much harder. Again, at any level. It could be that it is a senior position or a confidential position or an aged or critical or difficult requirement. But in lots of those cases, the contingent model often doesn't yield the result either in the time that they're looking for or the actual result that the client's looking for. And the retained model allows you to deliver a result and to reach a result. And that's what provides the solution.
Though, isn't it? I mean, contingent recruitment works in the we see the majority of businesses out there are doing
Absolutely.
it. So when you say retained allows you to deliver on where contingent doesn't. So could you expand on that a little bit? What do you mean?
Yeah, sure. And I agree with you. There are lots of people, there's a misconception that you're either retained or you're contingent, and I don't agree with that at all. My experience, both sit really well. There's lots of cases.
Okay. So people that are working with you, then you're happy to accept that actually there will be times where they work contingent.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lots of the people we work with have a contingent. I mean, lots of people.
Well, that's a myth bust.
Lots of people move away from it, but that's the stepping stone. I didn't go from contingent to retained overnight. I made a transition into recommending it as a solution as and when it was appropriate, and then starting to realise actually in most cases it is a better route to go down. And then I got to the stage where I was like, actually in every case it's the better route to go down. But that was a journey for me, and it is for a lot of people. So in where it's easy to fill, it's straightforward, there's lots of candidates available, somebody for it, the contingent model can work just fine. In loads and loads and loads of situations, the contingent model works just fine. But there are lots of situations where it doesn't, where either it is niche, or it's been open for a long time, or there's 3 or 4 positions to hire, or it's urgent and it needs to get done now, and you've got to drop everything else to work on it. And that, as we were talking about before, is very risky. Or it's confidential, or it's senior. Then it's necessary to put a more rigorous process in place to solve whatever isn't being solved. And that financial commitment allows us to do that and to work together to make sure that we reach a result. Your question about it's a bold statement and how does it deliver where the contingent model doesn't, it's a combination of things. Sometimes when you have financial commitment from a client, it enables you can go further. If you know that you are going to with the time and the effort required, you're going to make sure you're going to get a fee. If you know you're going to get a fee because you're retained, and your fill rate on a retained basis average is about 95%, usually a bit higher, you're pretty much as near as damn it guaranteed to get a fee. You can go as far as you need to find people, which is further than you can go on a contingent basis. So you can only do so much particularly if there are other agencies working on it, if the client's a bit flaky, if they're not giving you feedback in time, if the fee's a bit lower than normal. Almost certainly going to be working on other things to hedge your bets.
The thing is, though, that I don't know whether it's a competitive nature or whether it's stubbornness or combination of both, right? But there will be people out there, and I've got examples in my head of people I talk to on a regular basis who will be screaming, going... But I already do that. I already work my arse off. I already find the best candidates on a contingent basis. I already do that. So what additional value am I going to bring to the client by asking them to pay me up front? You must get that as a kind of when you're running your training courses and stuff like that. You must get that. Because there are people out there that will be like, no, look, I do the best possible job for my client. I don't just shift CVs around and work 50 jobs at a time. I pick and choose the work that I want to pick, and
I completely understand that. And it isn't necessarily do we get this in the question asked in the training course. It's what actually happens in the field, right? So, and I would ask the question to help that person, and you arrive at the answer is, well, why don't you fill all the jobs you work on then? What is the reason? What are the reasons that you do everything, you go as far as you can, you find all the candidates? What are the reasons? If you were to list out all of the reasons why you don't fill jobs, you'd probably find that it's not actually about how far you go. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you just can't.
There's way too many variables, right?
You can't put the time in, but the client can just pull the job at any time. Sometimes that's the reason.
If it's retained, right? I mean, because they've only at that point paid you a third of the fee.
Of course they can. Of course they can.
So they could still do that. They could still engage with a direct candidate. They could still.
No, they can't.
Oh, okay.
Well, they could do, but you'd get paid for the piece of work if they did.
Okay.
They could They can take a CV off another agency. Yeah. You can end up not just not filling the job, but with working for free.
But the key is you've been paid for the time that you've invested, which is
they are much less likely to because they've done that as well.
Yeah.
But there are all other sorts of things that happen, like the client stops giving you feedback, they just stop talking to you, disappear off the face of the earth. What they offer is completely different to what they say they're going to offer, or they don't align with you as you're feeding back to them, and you're telling them they need to do this and they don't listen to you. All those reasons, all those things, and so many more mean that you don't actually reach a result. So what where I'm getting to with it is sometimes you find the candidate that you wouldn't have found on a contingent basis simply because you can go a little bit further, because you have got the commitment and you don't need to work 10 other jobs at the same time, because you don't need to hedge your bets. Sometimes you more often than not, the client ends up hiring someone that they wouldn't have hired in a contingent process. And the reason that happens is because when you work on a retained basis, you are able to systematically identify all of the candidates that look to meet the brief, right? You're also able to be totally transparent with your client about what you're doing.
Okay.
So you can show your client where you're going, who you're identifying, who you're talking to, what the salaries they're earning, what their perception of them in the market is, if they're interested, why, if they're not interested, why they're not interested, and show them the whole journey of all the people. And if you think about it on a contingent basis, the number of profiles you look at, the number of people you're mentally assessing, you're mentally processing, client doesn't see any of that.
No.
They just hear what comes out your mouth is you're not paying enough or nobody's interested. And often it goes in, but they don't really take it in. There's no evidence. That's why, even if you were to give them some CVs and show them, it's really difficult to make them see. When you work on a retained basis, because you can be totally transparent, you end up getting to a point where they see that one candidate is the best option and is the only option available to them.
Yeah,
and it
you've
means
shown them all
them.
the stones you've turned, you've shown them the level of detail you've gone through.
And that gives them the confidence to make a hire where they wouldn't have done, because on a contingent basis, they never really know if there's something better out there. Because one of the big reasons a client doesn't hire is they say, well, just wait and see for someone better, maybe we'll get a better match if I just want to see some more CVs. That stops that from happening completely. So when they see the thoroughness of the search, they see the work that you're doing, they will interview the people that you tell them to interview, and they will hire the best available candidate to hire. And that's why often you'll complete on a search on a retained basis that you can't complete on a contingent basis.
Okay, that's understandable.
Somebody likened it in one of our collab calls the other day to Uber. Right, Uber didn't change the time it takes to get a taxi to you.
No.
They just gave you visibility of the journey.
Yeah.
Which meant the arrival time is acceptable.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like the maths question. You get 9 points for the working out and 1 point for the answer.
Yeah.
It's like that. And Jordan calls it driving the client to a result. It's very difficult to do that on a contingent basis because you can't be transparent, because they can just take those candidates as their own. You're too at risk. You're not being paid to do it. It's too risky to put all that time in. They can just say, actually, I've decided not to do that anymore, or we're going bust, or whatever it might be that means you don't get a fee from them. Whereas when you've got some financial commitment from your client, you can.
But how much business are you going to have to not turn away, but how many times are you going to get rejected before you finally push out a retainer? Do you know what I mean? Because
push out a retainer, like you're giving birth. I like it.
I just think the truth is that in a market where the majority of people work retained, if you're then going, no, pay me up front. I mean, if I
work contingent, you mean?
Yeah. Sorry, work contingent. Right. Yeah. I liken it to a mortgage advisor. I'm in the market for a new home. Blah blah blah. I'll go to a range of mortgage advisors. I'll pick the one that I like, and he or she will do all the work and will only charge me their fee at the end when I complete on my mortgage. Yeah. If I then go to John and John says, yeah, no, that's fine, but you pay me up front. Before I even take an email from you, you're paying me for it.
It's such a good question.
I'm not going to deal with that person because everybody else isn't doing that,
And what it does is brings out the piece that I want everybody to hear, which is what's important in that is when you last went to find a mortgage, what did you do?
I went to my broker.
And how did it go?
Great.
Brilliant. Did you pay him at the end of the process?
Yeah, I paid him at the end of the process.
Happy days. So why would you do anything different?
Well, this is the point.
You wouldn't. You would always then, for as long as you're having a good experience on that basis, you're not going to invest up front. And that's exactly the same with clients why do they buy a retained solution? If they're having a good experience, and we were talking about this before, if they're getting what they want, when they want it, and it's an enjoyable process at the moment, you're wasting your time trying to convert them to retained. And why should you? Why should you? They're having a good time, they're getting what they want, let them carry on. The reality is that the contingent model works in a lot of cases, right? In lots of cases where the candidate pool is rich and they've got time to, sift through CVs and all those situations, the contingent model works just fine. But there are so many markets, locations, industries, skill sets where they're not having a good time. They are not getting what they want, or they're not getting it when they want it, or they're not having a great time in the process, or all bloody three.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the situation when diagnosed correctly, it doesn't make sense for them to keep using the same model. It makes sense for you to, in fact, it's your duty to explain, actually, there's a different way of working. Let me walk you through it. It doesn't need to cost any more. Doesn't need to be any more expensive. I mean, providing you're working at a industry standard sort of 20%, I wouldn't go below that. Yeah. But if you're working at an acceptable fee, it doesn't need to be more expensive. And let me have the opportunity to show you. It doesn't mean we have to do everything like this. Just let me show you on this one project. And if you like it, great. We'll do it again. And if you don't, we won't. But every single client that I've worked with in this way has never gone back to work contingent, even on the easy stuff.
Fair. What about when they've got an internal recruitment team?
Well, it's the same situation. If they're getting what they want when they want it and it's working for them, carry on using their internal team. What I've found, and I learnt this from the wonderful Armstrong Craven, is it's in the situations of the 3 C's where an internal team is either lacking capacity, so there's just too much work and they can't handle it all, or it's capability, so it's a really niche skill set where it takes them a while to get their head around what exactly is needed in a, I don't know, C++ hardware engineering position, or they probably know that now, but back in the day I think they were struggling, and or confidentiality, where they just cannot go direct to market themselves and they need a third party to make the approaches. In the rest of the situations they're fine, but in those situations we will work in partnership with them to complement the service that they're providing to the business, not in opposition to them. We're not looking to usurp the provision of the service they're providing. We want to complement that and help them and support them where they've got any issues in those areas.
So relationship must play a key part in this, right? You're not going to. Well, would you? Are you going to pick up the call, a phone to a lead that you're chasing and sell them retained, given the fact that they don't know who you are, where you're calling from, and have got no historical...
Not like that over the phone, no. No.
But I mean, like the process being, right, you're chasing that lead, okay, let's jump on a Teams call or the old-fashioned meeting. Client meetings, remember those? I do. It's nice to actually physically be here. It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But like, so you go through all of that, but again, still, they don't know you from Adam, really, and you just might be the best snake oil salesperson in the world, saying all that good shit. You're telling me everything that I want to hear, and I'm like, oh, fucking hell, this guy knows his stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, here you go, I'll sign the check for you. That doesn't always happen, right?
No.
Especially when, cast your mind, or our minds back to when we used to do those client meetings, and you'd walk out of reception, say bye to your client, and there's another agency sat there ready to go in, because they booked them in back to back, right? So...
Can you retain work with your clients?
Does that play a part?
Yeah. Well, what I discovered was when I was converting existing clients, it was in the situation where the contingent model wasn't yielding results. So they were either getting bombarded with agencies and having a horrible time and sifting through crap and not being able to find what they wanted, or the opposite. It was just radio silence and they just weren't getting anything through and saying, come on, I need some more CVs. In both those situations, it makes sense for you to, and it's your duty to explain there is a different way of doing it and I'd really like to show you, and can I show you how effective it is? It's the same principle with a new client.
Okay.
So if they're already being serviced well by their suppliers, carry on doing it. I don't want to interfere with that. I don't want to usurp that, and well done, because most people aren't actually having a great experience. But if you are, then I would say like I mentioned to you before, like, why do you mind me asking why I'm here then? Why is it that you've been open to having a conversation with me?
Yeah, IBD called you a week ago and here I'm sat.
You wouldn't have even taken my call. No way would you have said, yes, fine, come and see me or have half an hour with me over Zoom. So do you mind me asking what that is? And often it's because we're just not quite getting enough, or the time to hire is a bit too slow, and then they start to divulge. Yeah. Okay, so there is an issue with the current supply chain. And when you start to diagnose, right, what's happening in that supply chain at the moment, who, in terms of what methods are they using? If they're using internal talent, are they going direct? Are they using agencies? If they're using agencies, how's that going? Well, I don't know, it's hit and miss. We get a flurry of activity to begin with, and then it starts to peter out, and then we have to kind of, come on, where are they type thing, and then we might get another wave, but it's not the right quality. And then, right, and what impact's that having on you? Well, it's pain. Like, is it okay? No, it's not okay. Like, we're frustrated with that. Well, then it is, again, it's my duty as a consultant to advise them that there are different ways of working. Here's the contingent model. This is when it works. This is when it works well. In those instances, it's great. However, there's quite a lot of instances where it falls over and it struggles because it's a no-win, no-fee service. We can only do so much, and we can't share our workings with you because we're working in that way, and we're not able to manage the project with you and commit to working with you until we reach a result. This model allows me to do that. And here is the examples of the projects that I've sold in exactly the same way in the past. This is what it looks like step by step, and I'd like the opportunity to demonstrate just on this assignment. Just let me show you on this one project. And then there are ways of making it easy for a brand new client to step into that relationship, and you can de-risk it for them.
Okay.
So it's a combination of like consultative diagnostic in the first instance, like, is what they're doing at the moment working? And a lot of the credibility that you build comes through that diagnostic, right? It's a bit like, Jordan has a great analogy for this. He says, imagine you go into a doctor and you say, I've got a headache, and he says, right, I've got some tablets for you, and writes a prescription. Like, would you take it? Like, I'm not sure. I'd want him to be saying, what, when, have you taken anything so far? Tell me what's working at the moment. Does it go when you lie down? Does it go away? And the quality of that diagnostics, then when he eventually does say, okay, so here's what I think, makes me think, okay, he hasn't even told me he went to this university or he's got this degree. I don't even know his qualifications, but the quality of the diagnostic gives me confidence in his eventual recommendation. So it's a lot of it is about diagnostic. A good section of it is about then the articulation of, look, there are different options. Most clients don't know what retained is. They think you're just trying to get money up front. The vast majority of hiring managers, talent acquisition teams even, just think you're trying to get just money up front.
A lot of recruiters too.
A lot of recruiters, they don't know what it is.
I hate to say it, that's the mentality they have.
I know.
I had a very bad view of retained recruitment.
Right.
Until we kind of set up on our own and we're like, right, would we like to move to that model? Yeah, eventually, absolutely, that kind of thing, right? And I think there's two parts to it, because you use the word consultant a lot there. And I don't think there's that many people in recruitment who are consultants. They're order takers. They scan the item and put it in the bag. Oh, you want you want a CNC engineer, I'll find you a CNC engineer.
Yeah.
You want a solutions architect, I'll find you a solutions architect. And that's all they're doing is just scanning an item and putting it in the bag.
Yeah.
And in the hope that it's the one that you asked for. And if it's not, crap, okay, I'll go back and find someone else. Shit, somebody else filled it, on to the next one. And I think that's where kind of there's a lot of agencies that are struggling at the minute, because they've become such order takers that they've kind of forgot that consultancy bit. But I think there is that element of a retained process benefits me more than the client, right? In that it's like, well, I'm going to do all this work, and if you pay me up front, then I'll do it better, or I'll commit to it, and that kind of thing, because that seems to be the mentality.
Well, that's the thing, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what retained was. I didn't know, and most people don't. In fact, there was a head of talent acquisition that did our course not long ago, and when we start at the beginning of the journey with everybody, we ask, like, why do you want to do this? What do you want to get from it, right? And she said, well, I'll be honest, I don't want to do it. I can't think of anything worse than having to learn how to sell a retainer. So me and Claire were like, oh, Jesus, how has this happened? And she said, I'm only here because the director of the company I've just joined has told me I've got to do it. And she was actually a head of TA for a big software house and had been for about 10 years and been convinced by a supplier to go and work for them. And they were just about to embark on our course. So she'd just got... Right. So we were like, oh, God. She was really obstructive, really negative about the retainer as a model completely, until it was about week 4. And then we were about to ask her to, step off the course, actually, because it was affecting the other people in the group. And then she said, I owe you an apology. I had no idea. I've shut every single recruiter that's walked in my door down who's pitched a retainer. Every single one, I've shut them down because I just didn't know what it was. I thought they just wanted money up front. I didn't know
That's what it looks like
what
on paper,
they really
doesn't it?
wanted was to do a proper job. And she's now a testimonial on our website. She's fully retained. In fact, she heads up the retained function now for that group. And she's a head of TA and an ex-recruiter. If she doesn't know what it is, most of the people that you talk to don't.
But then it's been pitched wrong though, right?
Exactly.
I mean, me and Sean are
Exactly.
ex-Michael Page, and we had a couple of training sessions on retained and, you should try and move to a retained model and that kind of thing. But it was always pitched wrong because, again, it was always put across to us, and it might be different now, and I'm sure it is different now because they've moved on a lot since our time there. But it was always pitched as a, get paid for the work that you're putting in. Get,
it's all
you
about
deserve it.
what
And it was
benefits you.
always kind of like, that's all good, and I'm really pumped up about this. But how the fuck am I going to tell a client, you need to pay me? Why? Because I deserve it.
100%.
It's so stupid. And then we'd watch. I mean, I remember a period of time where
I think I had the same training as you, and it did nothing for me.
And you
either.
walk out of there all pumped up like, I'm going to sell fucking retainers. But you're like, but I don't know how. I still don't know how. All I know is that I want a retainer now. And I'm being targeted to do 2 a month. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I need it. And I remember there was a time where they pitched a retainer. They pitched 8 retainers to the same company. And it was 6 sales roles and 2 IT positions. And they were high-fiving and like cartwheeling and about how great that was. And they didn't deliver on a single one of those roles.
God.
They didn't fill a single one of those roles.
God.
And then at the time, me and Sean were like, "See, this is why we don't believe in retainers." And we were like, we were right all along. But then, not until kind of recently, when we've kind of reflected back on it, and we're like, they didn't do anything different.
No,
they still worked in a contingent manner. All they did was sell the retainers, chalk the fee up on the board, and then carry on with BD and try and win more work and win more work. And it was almost like, you really cocked that one up because actually you're not going to work with that client again now because you sold 8 retainers and didn't deliver on a single one.
No, but also everybody in the vicinity of that is never going to sell a retainer.
Yeah, because then you're like, I don't want that. Yeah, I don't want that.
The vast majority of people that I work with have either won a retainer and failed to deliver on it, or they know somebody that's won a retainer that's failed to deliver on it, or they're too scared to win it in the first place because they don't know what they're supposed to do, and they just don't think it's any different.
Yeah.
And most of it is mindset. Most of it is not understanding what it is.
That's key, though, isn't it? Because we say to our guys all the time, right? Okay, in any scenario, we're like, right, that's fine. Okay, have they got other interviews going on? They didn't say. They didn't say, or we didn't ask. Or it'd be, okay, what? So that's the salary that they want, but have they told you why they're looking for a 15 grand increase in what they're on at the minute? Oh, he didn't say. He didn't say, or you didn't ask. And it's the same thing, actually, because if I think about it, the reality is, have I ever asked for a retainer? No.
I'll pick you up on that, only because lots of people say that to me. It is about asking, and it is about having the conversation, but it's not about asking. It's about diagnosing if it's necessary and then explaining that this is the solution. If you ask, can I have a retainer? The answer is almost certainly going to be no.
Yeah, no, of course. But the point still applies in that
did you diagnose if it's necessary in the first place?
Recruitment doesn't work when you've never tried to sell a retainer, you've never proposed a retainer.
Oh, and if you don't even know what it is.
Yeah. Or you don't truly understand what it is, and you're like, it doesn't work. It wouldn't work in my market. How do you know it wouldn't work in your market?
Don't even know what it is.
Yeah. And you said off camera about the call centre thing. I think that people find that really interesting.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I guess what I experienced once I started working on a retained basis is that having that financial commitment from your client enables you to solve whatever it is that you're facing together. It might be like one single assignment. It might be just one single hire that's a bit tricky, or it's niche, or it's in an awkward location. It might be that it's confidential, or it might be that it's a difficult skill set. But sometimes it's like there's a few positions, and it doesn't necessarily need to be senior hire. It can be lower level. One of the last pieces of work I did was for a friend of mine, a friend of a friend, who's got a small call centre in Salford Keys, financial services, and he was really struggling with salespeople. not particularly experienced. They were telesales, like not just first job, but almost like some estate agency experience or something like that was fine. And it was cold calling. It was pretty heavy going, and people just weren't cutting it. And the turnover was awful. But it was a great little company. He was a great guy. He was really looking after people, but they just weren't. Nobody had actually put any friction in the assessment process to whittle out, because obviously on a contingent, why would you do that on a contingent basis? You just want to shove them in, really. You don't. There's no vested interest in making sure that somebody is actually going to be the right candidate. And he wanted more than one. There was like 5 open positions that he needed. And so I worked with him on a retained basis. It was just a third of the overall fee that was paid on commencement of work, which enabled me to put in place not only an advertising campaign, but then an assessment process and do workshops with them and put them through their paces. And then a second time with a slightly harder task, and then be able to send the candidates to him to be able to spend the first week on a trial. We placed all 5, to my knowledge. They're all still there. I mean, okay, it was only a year ago, but that was a better result than he'd ever had from any of the tens of contingent agents that he'd worked with before. So what I've realised is, okay, the contingent model works in a lot of cases, but for any reason, if it doesn't, is almost always something that you can do on a retained basis that's going to solve the challenge.
That's fair. So what's the biggest kind of objection you get on your training courses and stuff when you're, day one, the guys they've come onto the course because they want to, they don't know how to, or they don't know where to start, so they've come to you. What's the biggest objection you often come across?
From the guys, from the people who are teaching. You get all of them, just like you said before, it won't work in my market. Nobody else does it in my market. That's a really good one. Like lots and lots of people say that. Nobody works retained in my market. Everybody works contingent. Like the clients just...
Is that a fair point?
They just don't know, they don't know what it is. Nobody else is doing it. Yeah, of course it's a fair point. I mean, psychologically, like it makes sense to think, well, nobody else is doing it, so that means that I'm not going to be able to. But the reality is it's the opposite, because having now worked on a retained basis for several years and worked in different markets where it's predominantly contingent or all exclusively in contingent, and sold search against other search firms, I can tell you from first-hand experience it's a hell of a lot easier selling retained against contingent than it is against other search firms. And the reason that is because where you've got sophisticated search firms providing a good search methodology, the vast majority of clients are getting a great service. They're getting what they want when they want it, pretty much, and they're having a good time doing it.
Pinch point to go against.
There's not a lot. I mean, when you start looking at the firms that are using the very big search firms, the Shrek firms, then it's a bit different because they're very big. Their processes are quite slow. They're quite bloated. They're very expensive. And actually, the higher up you go, the easier it is to sell against them, as I've eventually found out when I was then competing against the double cuffs and the pinstripes down in London going, fucking hell, like, how did this happen? But if I come back down to, like, the normal world that I was in for a long time, it is that when you're selling against contingent, and if the market is all using a contingent model, there are lots of customers that aren't getting what they want. And they're not getting it when they want it, and they're having a pretty hard time doing it. And it's actually better that there isn't other people suggesting this, and that you're the one to say, okay, tell me about what's happening. Is it working for you? Are you getting what you want when you want it? Is it an enjoyable process? They go, are you having a laugh? Why are you like, you ask that question when you know the answer, but they look at you like you're an idiot. Of course I'm not. That's why I'm talking to you. Okay, well, tell me what methods you're using. They tell you what they're doing. You say, okay, and then you can diagnose, here's what's happening here. Every contingent recruiter that's working on a no-win, no-fee basis has got to grade or rank their jobs, right? They work 10 jobs at a time, say, for example, as you were saying before. They've got to grade them. They've got to work closest to the fee.
Gold, silver,
everybody
bronze,
does, or ABC, or whatever, however their grading system works, because they've got to work on the things they're most likely to fill. And every recruiter doing that means that all the ones that are high fees, easy to fill, nice location, sexy brand, communicative client, they're nearer the top. The ones that are awkward locations, they're a bit aged, especially if there's other
niche skill set, whatever that
niche,
might be.
it gets a bit more difficult, goes further down the list, right? If there's other agencies working on it, it goes even further down the list. Clients make the mistake of thinking by putting it out to lots of agencies, they're duplicating the effort, but it's exactly the opposite. They actually get less when they put it out to multiple agencies. And then when you realise that everybody's looking in the same place. So you basically, everybody is contacting the same candidates, everybody's reaching out to the same people. You have this awful like house for sale effect where you put several for sale signs up outside your house and everyone starts to think, shit, what's wrong with that house? Because there's like 4 different agencies contacting them about it. And because most candidates that are active will respond to initial approaches, everybody's getting feedback from the people that will respond to initial approaches, and the ones that don't respond to initial approaches don't actually get engaged with because they haven't got the time to headhunt them because they're too busy working on their A grade jobs and their B grade jobs and their C's, and they're not going to headhunt on the E's and the F's. So there's a vast majority of passive talent pool for those difficult jobs that just don't get contacted. So when you start to explain to a client what happens when they work on a contingent basis, they start to realise, and you can explain. So if you're getting if it's working for you, carry on doing that. But if it's not, there's a different way of working that doesn't actually cost any more. But it enables me with some financial commitment to put in place a rigorous process that reaches the people that nobody else has been able to reach, and put a process in place where you might not end up with exactly what you set out to find, right? Because that might not exist.
No.
You might not end up with...
But you'll be damn sure close to it.
But it will be the best available. And you'll have all of the evidence.
This person's missing these particular bits, but this is why.
They'll
because
see,
actually,
like the maths
here's
question.
Everybody that's...
Exactly.
Okay.
So they can be confident making a hire knowing that it's the best result that's available to them in the market at this time. And they're never going to be in that position on a contingent basis. So when you're able to articulate that bit to them, then they're able to see that there's another way. And then it's just about making it easy for them to step into it with you, putting the terms in place and the mechanics in place to make them feel comfortable to do it. And then you're away. And then, of course, it's about delivery. So you need to make sure that you deliver it properly.
Who cares? You've been paid the money. So, okay, thinking about from the sales perspective of this then, at what point do you think is the most effective time to start discussing retained recruitment with your client?
Well,
got you there, haven't I?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm just trying to think what would be my best advice on that.
Because I'm not going to pick up the phone and be like, Louise, I see you're looking for a financial controller. If you retain me, I'll do this, do you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to do that.
Well, but what I would do is I'd pick up the phone and say, I see you looking for a financial controller. How's it going? If it's an age...
fine, we get CVs coming through,
happy days.
We still do. Or if we've got a PSL or, whatever.
Then I'd say, is it working for you? Are you getting what you want? If they say yes, then I'd say, great, brilliant. If you get stuck, I'd like to help you. And then I'd just keep checking in on them. If they say, no, we need some more CVs, can you give us some more CVs? I'd say, absolutely, brilliant. Let me come and see you and understand exactly what you're looking for. And then I'd diagnose it.
In the current market, though,
very
few clients would respond with that, right? And and this is purely based on, again, all the work that I'm doing on the RecTalk side, speaking to a load of kind of indie recruiters is what I call them, sort of 1 to 5 person businesses, right? Most of their work with new clients is being won by spec.
Yes. Yeah, which is a great way.
So how do you go from being a spec heavy recruiter to selling yourself on a retained basis? Because the reality is with the theory of spec recruitment is that look what I can do with no brief. All I've done is have a look at your business, have a look at your job spec, and I found you from my talent pool, from the people that I'm liaising with, the best suitable candidate. And you're so impressed with that person because this person is head and shoulders above all the other people you're speaking to at the minute. Look what I can do. Now give me a brief. How do I then turn that into okay, now you're going to pay me for it? I've already given you, it's almost like that crack dealer mentality, right? Here's your first hit for free, now pay me, and I'll, you know what I mean?
Well, I can see what you mean. This crack deal is it is a common misconception, and I suppose I would have thought the same thing. But the reality is that when you look at it from the client's perspective, it really depends what they want, right? Quite often you spec a CV in. Well, sometimes you spec a CV in, and that candidate happens to be perfect for the job. Mm-hmm. And they interview the candidate, and they're like, "Yeah, happy days. Well done. Nice work. I'll have them."
Generally speaking, in spec recruitment, it's more of a look at my shiny Charizard.
It's a door opener, isn't
it? Yeah. You're not even, that candidate isn't even going to be the one that goes to interview.
Exactly.
Because the reality is that candidate isn't probably not even on the market, let alone a real candidate.
Exactly. So what happens more often than not is what it does is open up the need for you to carry out some work for them. Mm-hmm. So what I learned to do from some very good teachers and mentors was open the door with a candidate that has arisen as a result of a search that we've recently carried out. Mm-hmm. Right? This candidate, happens to have this skill set, but and we all know the silver medalists, the bronze medalists come 0.0001 behind the gold, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean they're not exceptional candidates, but that this candidate has come as a result of a search, isn't quite in the right location, thought it might be interesting to you. They say, okay, this looks interesting. Yes, let's have a look at them. Might be right, might not be right. Mm-hmm. Before I agree to interview them, that's when I want to find out, what are they going into here?
Yeah, I've got to let them know. Yeah.
So what are you looking for? What's been done on it so far? Where are you up to with the search, with the project? What exactly do you need? And I'd say if you want to go ahead and interview this candidate, go for it. I'm not sure whether they're going to be a fit for you because they haven't been assessed against your brief, mm-hmm. right? They've been found as a result of another search. But happy days, go ahead and interview the candidate. If they turn out to be a fit, here's the terms that would come alongside that. They're fixed for 25%, 20%, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. It's a lump sum fee. In this project that you're carrying out, would you be happy to know that that's the hire based on that being the only candidate that you see? Or would you like to know whether there's anybody else out there? Because if you want to just see one, that's fine, go ahead. But if you want to see others, then I'd like to be able to...
But for them, it might not be just one, right? That might be like...
one of many.
The best of a bad bunch.
So they might just be comparing them with the other candidates they've already got in process.
Well, I'm not just seeing this one person like Louise. I've seen 10 people already.
So great. I'd say go ahead and interview. If they turn out to be right, there'll be a lump sum fee paid on acceptance of offer. If they don't turn out to be right, and if at the end of the interview process they're not right for you, or they don't accept the job because they haven't been briefed about it from the beginning, then we'd be happy to carry out a search to find, in the same way we found this candidate. But the alternative that I always give them, and what works really nicely, is to ensure that we don't lose 2-3 weeks in that process, we can carry out the search in the background. And if that candidate turns out to be a fit, you'll only pay what you would pay ordinarily. But if they don't, then we'll have a short list of candidates for you by week 3 for you to revert to. Yeah. So either way, you'll be certain that by the end of these 4 weeks, you'll be making a hire, mm-hmm. and you'll be making the best hire that's available to you in the market at this time. It doesn't matter to me whether they just want to interview them and pay a lump sum, because that's great. Yeah. We quite often call that opportunistic hiring. It's really mm-hmm. nice. It works really nicely with search mm-hmm. because you're constantly finding people that other people don't know are active, and that introduction opens the door for you to then diagnose, do they need a search or not?
Your behaviours as a recruiter, in that if you're a spec-heavy recruiter and that's how you're mapping out your market, then
it works perfectly well.
You continue to do that. And all you're doing is you're using Retained as almost a different weapon in your arsenal to go, well, actually, don't just see this one candidate. Let me start a process in the background.
Exactly.
And then bought into.
Yeah, and if they do hire the candidate partway through, they're only going to pay what the retainer's deducted from that lump sum fee. But it's covered a shortlist production for you, so that you know beyond a doubt by the end of these 4 weeks there'll be a shortlist of candidates for you to choose from, and you'll be able to see all the workings, and you'll know they are the best candidates available to you in the market at this time. What I've found is if a client is accepting a spec CV, it's the perfect time to position that solution where they are guaranteed to be in a situation in 4 weeks' time because they're desperate. Like they don't know you. It's a random
this is
drop
the point,
in
right?
their
it's
inbox.
Like, hang on a minute. Yeah,
they're not in a good place if they're accepting things like that.
Let's look at the bigger picture. It's not that you are outstanding at reading a job spec better than everybody else around you. You know what I mean? Like it can't be that you got the brief or you understood that job spec better than every other recruiter that they've spoken to, because that's pretty insulting to every other recruiter, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, no, there's a situation and something happening here, and actually that client is not necessarily in that position to be as picky and choosy as they perhaps were 4 weeks ago.
There's a saying that somebody told me, and they said, I forget who it was, that companies hiring in distress make distressed hires.
Yeah.
And when you slow that down by saying, sure, go ahead and interview this person, if they're a fit, brilliant, no problem, all you got to do is pay this. But actually, if we do this in the background, then you'll be certain that there isn't anybody better. Mm-hmm. And then you can either carry on and hire that person, or you can hire one from the shortlist. Like, they've got all bases covered, and you can commit to that within a certain length of time with a financial commitment. Mm-hmm. So I've always found that spec and retained work perfectly together. It isn't the opposite. It isn't like that. It doesn't preclude you from working on a retained basis.
Yeah, the initial thought process is there, but actually, that's a really, you're almost using if spec is where your skill set is, it's sort of like, continue doing that, but let's start having this conversation alongside it, because
they're
already bought into you. Yeah, you've provided them somebody that no one else their current process hasn't provided them. So there's already a level of buy-in to you and as your ability as a consultant.
Yeah, exactly.
So now consult. Yeah. Use that opportunity.
So is this what you want? Do you just want a random CV and you want to hire that one, or do you actually want to carry out a process where you know that what you're hiring is the very best available to you in the market at this time? If all you want is a random CV, fine, go ahead and interview. No problem. If you actually need to know it's the best that you can possibly get, then it won't cost you any more, and I'll do it in the background.
Fair. Yeah. No, I like it. Yeah. Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Okay, good. I'm glad about that.
Okay, so I think an obvious concern for any recruitment business owner out there would be, well, how many times am I going to have to pitch it before I sell my first one on average? How much work am I going to have to turn away? Or what am I going to miss out on? Am I putting my revenue on pause for 3 months? Because you must get these concerns come up. So
of course,
what's the trend for someone to move to? I'm moving to retained. That's what I do now.
Well, as I maybe we shouldn't have had some of this conversation before we started, because you're going to hear some of it again, but.
Happy to do so.
What I've always experienced is that there's a misconception that you're either retained or you're contingent, and if you're going to go retain, you have to go all retained, and that's it. And it's like cold turkey. And some people do that, right? Some people do that. Most people do that because they've got more of a push. They've got so much pain with contingent that they've just like, it's that or I'm out sort of thing. But more often than not, people want to do more of it because this is painful, but it's not so painful that they don't want to do any of that. And actually, it's just something they want to do more of to begin with. And that's exactly what it was like for me. I didn't just go from one to the other overnight. And that they fit really nicely together as solutions in your suite of your portfolio of ways of working. And that actually the contingent model works perfectly well in lots of situations. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. If the process is working well, if it's working for you and it's working for your client, don't change it. Yeah. Keep it the same. If it's either not working for you or it's not working for your client, then there's another way of working. And it depends on your situation with it. If it's an existing client, sometimes it's working for them and they're like, yeah, carry on. And you're like, well, hang on a minute, but it's not working for us because you keep pulling the bloody rug on us every now and then. Yeah, you keep
doing this.
And that is a different conversion conversation, which works just as well. But you can also have a retained way of working that solves the problems that contingent model doesn't, like niche hires, critical positions, urgent, confidential, multi-hires, senior, age requirements, that fits really nicely alongside a contingent service. That's the first thing that I'd say. The second thing that I'd say is there's this other misconception that it takes a long time to win work on a retained basis. There are so many people that I've worked with and that projects that I've won myself, where they join our course and within a week they've won their first project. Sometimes it's days. Like lots and lots and lots and lots of emails that we screenshot, we share all the time, like, fucking hell, I won it. Like day 3 or whatever it is. Or I watched the course on Monday and Tuesday, pitched it on Wednesday and won it on Thursday, you know. Yeah. So that's just a misconception. It doesn't need to take a long time. If it's a brand new recruiter with only, a few months experience, it's going to take ages. It's going to take ages. If it's an experienced consultant, we're talking 3-4 years plus, they know their market and they've been dicked about on a contingent basis it takes
they know the pain
takes no
points.
time at all.
Yeah, okay.
Like a lot of it is just concept and then language, and then they're away. And the other thing is, the third point to make is, and this was only made to me recently by somebody that has just moved from contingent to retained, and he said, you never explained this to me, and I'm going to tell you so that you can tell other people. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And he said he was worried about this drop in revenue. He was ready for like a 6 months. I'm not going to make anything for 6 months. White knuckle it. I'm going to hold on. And he said, actually, it was totally different, because when I take contingent work on, I have to take the brief, I have to go and find candidates, I have to brief those candidates, I have to bring those candidates to interview, then the client changes their mind, then they don't come back to me for a week or so, then I have to go again because I've changed the brief, then I have to find some more candidates, then I have to put them to interview, then one of them gets an offer, then they turn it down because it's not enough, then I have to find some more candidates, then I have to put them into interview, and then finally one gets an offer that's the right offer, they accept it, and then they've got 3 months notice, and then I get paid.
Yeah.
So we're talking like 5-6 months before I get paid anyway. Mm-hmm. And I'm working on something that statistically I have a 75% chance of not filling. Right? So there's that. When I win my work on a retained basis, which I did, by the way, yesterday, and this is when he was telling me, I sent the invoice, they paid it already. They paid me already. Mm. Within 24 hours, I've got a third of my fee. So he said, you must tell people like not to be so afraid that this is going to be this massive lag in revenue, because your money comes so much sooner. And then I know within 3 weeks, I've got my shortlist invoice paid.
It's an old school sales mentality, isn't it? We had Benjamin Dennehy on the podcast.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, great guy. And he sort of said it in passing, and me and Sean were like, we need to go back to that. That's the point that people in recruitment seem to miss.
Right.
We spend so long trying to qualify in people. You know, oh, I don't want to use agencies. Oh, yeah. Why is that? Have you ever tried using agencies? Why don't you give us a go? And we spend so long trying to qualify in these leads. Oh, I'm already using 3 agencies. Well, what's a 4th? You know, we do it to ourselves. And he was like, no, you should be fucking qualifying out people.
Yeah.
Oh, you've already got 3 agencies on it. I don't want to work here.
No.
Oh,
exactly.
You don't work with agencies. I don't want to work with you. Oh, we've got a PSL and we never deviate from it, and we're never going to deviate from it. And you've got to jump through all these hoops. I don't want to work with you. Mm. And when you start qualifying out all these all the shit, then you're left with the ones that are most likely to do some business with. Yeah. And that might only be 2 or 3 people. Yeah. And you're so used to having 25, 30 leads at a time that it feels strange and uncomfortable, and I don't know what I'm going to do. My pipeline's looking really weak. And it's like, well, no, it's not. Mm-mm. Your pipeline's stronger than it's ever been, because what you're now doing is you're not lying to yourself that, well, I've got 25 leads that I'm chasing. And, you know, of those, statistically, you know, I might turn 3 out of 10 of them into business. So the more leads I have on this side, the more money I make here. Now, stop lying to yourself. Stop running after jobs that aren't going to turn. Stop running after clients that aren't going to want to do business the way you want to do business. And when you start turning that business away and you start focusing on okay, I'm only going to pitch to people who want to and are bought into the idea of using an agency and are open to listening to me pitch Retain to them, and are open to having an actual conversation about why that might be worthwhile. You might start...
Yeah, totally. I've got so many things going around in my head, like... It's so true. It's so true. Like, you know, you posed me that situation before. Well, I'm using agencies. Yeah, it's going fine. Great, carry on.
Yeah, good for you.
Great, carry on. And I don't want to interfere with anything if it's working for you. Where I am useful is where that isn't working for you. Mm-hmm. Whether it's you're not getting what you want, or you're not getting it when you want it, or you're not having a very good time doing it. If you ever come across that sort of situation, I want to be the one to help you. Yeah. Like, you don't need to push in. Like when they say, well, everyone else is working contingently, why should I pay you up front? Great. If it's working for you, carry on doing it. I'm not going to push into that.
But you've missed the point. You know, if that's the objection, they've missed the point, right?
Well, yeah, but sometimes it takes a while. Like you said before, well, a lot of recruiters will they'll just keep throwing CVs and hope that something sticks. And that's scan it, put it in the basket type thing. And I always say to a client at the end of explaining, this is what I want to do and this is why I want to do it, if what you're looking for is someone to send CVs to you, hoping that something's going to stick, then I'm not the right choice.
Yeah.
Right? Carry on using contingent agencies. If, however, what you want is someone to... is an expert to apply a thorough process and commit to working with you until we reach a result, then I'd love to be the one to do that. Mm-hmm. What is it that you want? you know, and you're kind of declaring yourself out at that stage. Like if you want this, I'm not that person.
Yeah,
and the other thing that happens, and it's so interesting because I was coaching on this the other day, is you quite often get to a stage through the objection handling process, and there's lots of different stages to learning Retained, and a lot of its mindset is this stuff, right? And then when you get to the actual intricacies, there's lots of little, okay, but what about that and what about this? And one of them is where a client says to you, well, yeah, but you get down the paper, I've already got some people in process. Like, we've got somebody internal that we're considering, and we've got someone in our network that we're considering. Like, what should we do about that? And what is really interesting is it took me quite a long time, years in fact, to realise that they say that after you found out about the position, you found out how critical it is, you found out exactly what they want, and they've said, yeah, I want you to work on it. And you've said, then I want some financial commitment. They're like, oh, okay. And it's not until you've insisted that I want some financial commitment, they then tell you, yeah, but we've got somebody in process. Yeah. You would have taken that as a contingent recruiter, worked on it for 3, 4, 5 weeks,
when the
and
reality
never
is
fucking known that they've got into.
And how many times does that happen? All of a sudden, there's an internal application. All of a sudden, there's there was somebody we didn't tell you about.
It was there in the background the whole time, but it comes out. And so Benjamin's right. Like, that process qualifies it out. And if lots of people come on the collab calls, and every now and then they'll say, "I lost, but I won." Because they're now going to go away and they're going to interview those internal candidates. And if they're not a fit, they're going to commission the search. Yeah. Happy days. Yeah. You've just not had to spend 5 weeks wasting your time on something.
You've either saved time or you've made
chance.
money. Exactly. Whatever the result. Yeah.
Exactly. And you were saying about, sorry.
No, go on.
You were saying about how, this idea of qualifying people out. I love Benjamin Dennehy. And, you can either work on 10, 15 different jobs with a 75% chance of working on something that doesn't result in a fee. And statistically, that's what it is, right? Or you can work on 4 and have a 95% chance of filling all of them. Or you can work on 8 and fill all of them. You can do the same amount of work and make X number of more revenue.
Either X up your billings or your free time.
Yeah, exactly.
Which... Yeah.
So it is scary, it is scary, but I'd say to people, don't think of it as a cold turkey. You don't have to be all or nothing. There's a step in between, and then you can decide, actually, and a lot of people that I work with do go, do you know what? I don't do contingent anymore. Yeah. We had one the other day, James Ward. Yeah, he had a good chat with us, and he's like, yeah, happy days. I all work retained now, all because of going on this journey. And you can do that, but you don't need to. So don't think of it as what you have to do. It's
not all or nothing.
They can sit nicely together in a suite of solutions and the ways that you work. And the money does actually come quicker than you think it's going to, because it comes in immediately. You don't have to spend X amount of time working on something and get paid when the candidate starts. You get your first retainer on commencement, the second stage on agreement of shortlist, and the balance on acceptance of offer. So it all comes before you would have got anywhere near a fee for a contingent piece of work.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. No, I like it. That's really good. Right, so how do people get in touch with you and jump on your course and all that stuff?
So I'm all over LinkedIn, but retrainedsearch.com is our website. Have a little look at it. We're actually having it redone at the moment. And there's a Talk to Us page. Our diary's on there. Mine is quite full at the moment, so there's a few of us that talk to you. Me, my fellow business partner Jordan, and he is also a coach and went through the course himself 3 years ago. And another one of our members, Robin, who did the course himself and has now put several members of his team through. He's there to talk to you too, so you can talk to any of us. How else? That's probably the best thing. The website, retrainedsearch.com.
Cool. No, I appreciate it. Well, look, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Hopefully, I think there's a lot to get out of that, actually. You'll have a great time clipping and everything. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nitin. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We're good?